Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Mutaz, and I'm here today to kind of give you an overview of this Zoom training session for faculty. I have with me my colleague, Pablo Avila. He'll be here with me to help me along the way. Um, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everyone so that we can begin the session. The first thing that I want to share with everyone, it's going to be a resource document, and I'm going to go ahead and put that into the chat as well. Right? Um, so this resource document is basically a compiled list of Zoom training sessions that the Center for Teaching and Learning has been offering to faculty. And this document contains resources that participants can potentially refer to during and after the session. And the document is publicly available and you can share it with anyone that you want to. So please, you can go ahead and do that. Just share it with your colleagues or anyone who could potentially benefit from this information. As we move down the list in this document, the first thing that you're going to find is basically an overview of the session and what the session covers. And you'll see here that the theme of today's agenda is we're going to cover how to create a recurring meeting, how to create breakout rooms, as well as a brief overview of some of the security features. As we move along down the list, you'll find that the first thing, there's resources, and in particular, these resources concern the Zoom security features. There's a lot of these features. We're going to cover a few of them today. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. So when you have some free time, I invite you to go over the list carefully just to kind of get an idea of some of these security features. And if you scroll down just a little bit more, you'll find that there's resources, and these resources are kind of like tutorials on some Zoom features. You can also kind of take a look at this list when you have some free time. If anything catches your attention, then by all means, you can take a look at it and get some more information about that. And then lastly, if we scroll towards the bottom, there is a list of all the previous Zoom training sessions, right? So if you wanted to take a look at all the previous Zoom training sessions, you'll be able to find them here. You'll be able to find the recordings and when they were basically held. So these sessions are they have been offered since last spring, so spring of 2020. And you'll be able to find all of the previous sessions in this list, right? So this is the document, the resource document. Again, like I said, is publicly available. Feel free to share it with your colleagues and anyone else who could potentially benefit from this document.
Can I ask you something? If
Yes,
I go
sure.
to the LaGuardia website, because the other day I lost in the chat, once we finished, I couldn't find the link. So if I go to LaGuardia, it should be there, right? The website. And
yes,
the faculty.
if this document necessarily is not there, but you will find all the Zoom resources that the video recordings that
not there. No wonder
this document is not there yet. And the reason for that is because we have been updating this document internally, and we have been sharing it with participants in these workshops. But yeah, so the document is publicly available, but it's not posted on the LaGuardia website. However, the recordings are, and I can put the link to that in a moment in the chat.
Okay. So before we finish the session, can you give me a minute so I can copy the chat in?
Yeah.
I can copy, but I don't know how. I need to paste it somewhere.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. We'll give you all the time. Yeah, definitely.
And by the way, we will also send this document in the email along with the recording.
All right, great. So I don't.
Thank you. Great, thank you.
Okay, so so now that we have that taken care of, we can go ahead and begin our session. So the first thing that we want to do is to log into our CUNY licensed Zoom account. And to access that, you're going to have to go to this link, which is cuny.zoom.us. And I'll go ahead and put that in the chat as well. Right, so this is the first step that you're going to do, is just access the website. And then from the list of options available to you, you're going to go ahead and click on sign in. And when you click sign in, you'll be redirected to the CUNY web applications login page. And in this page, you're going to be asked to put in your CUNY login credentials, right? So this is what you're going to have to put in. And if you're not too sure, or if you don't have that information, right, the IT department has put this document together that can help you basically find your information, right? So if a faculty is not too familiar with the CUNY First login process, they can then take a look at this document that IT has put together. It has step-by-step process that you can go through to find out your information and how to log in to the CUNY system as well, right? So this document is available. I'll go ahead and put this link in the chat as well. Go ahead and put it in, right? So you can use that to basically log in and find your information. So let me go back and put my credentials in, right? All right, and once you log in, right, so this is the first page that you'll be redirected to. And in this page, you're going to find, your upcoming meetings, your previous meetings, your personal room, as well as your meeting templates. But to make sure that you are using the correct, the correct account, you can go to the upper right corner and click on your profile icon. And if you click on your profile icon, you'll see your name, right, as well as this key word licensed, right? So this is the keyword that you want to look for, meaning that you are using the CUNY licensed account for Zoom, so that you'll be able to take advantage of all its features, right? So this is one way you can check if you are using the correct Zoom account information. Once you basically identify that, you can then come in here, right? And so to start, the first thing we're going to cover is how to create a recurring meeting. And by default, you'll always be in the meeting section. And what you want to do at this point, if you look at the right, there's going to be this little button that says schedule a meeting, right? So if you're familiar with the process, you'll just go ahead and click on schedule a meeting. Once you click on schedule a meeting, it'll take you to this page. And in this page, you'll basically be asked to put in some information, right? And the first thing that it's going to ask for is a topic. The topic is just going to be the name of the meeting. And in your case, if you're facilitating a class or if you're teaching a course this semester, then you might want to use that as your topic name. So for instance, you might want to use something like ENG 101 if you are teaching an English 101 course, right? And if you're teaching just one course, then you can just leave it as that. But if you're teaching the same course, let's say in the evening and in the morning, then you might want to add like an identifier after ENG 101, such as evening or morning, right? So that's if you're teaching in the morning, then you'll put that so that you'll know that this recurring meeting is for your morning class. And if you have another meeting in the evening, then you can do the same thing as well. But if you're not, if you don't meet twice in a day, then you can just go ahead and leave it as ENG 101 or whichever course you are teaching this semester. Once you have the topic name, the description is optional, so you don't really have to put the description in. And then if you move down the list, it's going to ask you, when are you meeting, right? So you can go ahead and click on this little calendar icon. And when you click the calendar icon, it'll just open up the calendar and then you'll select the days that you meet with your class. So if you meet every Thursday or if you meet every Monday, then you're just gonna go ahead and select that, right? So I'm gonna just go ahead and select Thursday. I'll assume that this is our meeting day for this purposes, right? So I'll select that. And then our start time, let's say we meet every Thursday at 3 p.m. So I can go ahead to the next column and then select the time that my class starts. I'll go ahead and select it, right? Sometimes if you're teaching a morning class, right? So if your class starts, let's say a little earlier, right? Then you might want to be just a little careful, right? So if it was 10, you just want to make sure that you switch PM to AM, right? So in the third column, you want to go ahead and switch this to AM instead of PM. That's if your class meets in the morning time. Sometimes I forget to do that. So just be just be aware of that, right? So when you do select the time, always make sure that you select the correct time frame, right? So it's either PM or AM. And once you have,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have a
not at all.
question. Sorry,
Sure.
maybe, and I apologize if you're going to get to this.
No, not
What
at
if
all.
your class meets twice a week?
Right. So yeah, we will get to that. Yes, if you meet
Okay,
twice a
sorry.
week.
Thank
Yeah, no,
you.
not at all. Absolutely. And it's great that you asked that question. Yeah. And that's why I think the recurring meeting is going to be so helpful for you, especially if you
Okay,
meet
great.
twice a
Thank
week.
you.
Yeah.
If I can ask another question
Sure.
about the time.
Mhm.
When the time is only in half an hour, like
Right.
30. So my class starts at 5:45. So
Okay.
I couldn't get it to stay in 5:45. So I had to go with 5:30, and I emailed the students and I told them I'd be there at 5:30, but the class starts at 5:45. But I saw Pablo the other day. He clicked twice and something, and then it registered for him, but it didn't work for me.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So yes, if you wanted to change the time because it's in halftime intervals, you can just click inside the box where it says select time, right? And once you click inside, you can actually type in when your class starts, right? So
But it goes away.
5:45. You have to click it. You have to select it. Yeah.
I didn't click.
Yeah. Once you select it, it'll
Okay.
register it for you. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. So that once you have the time and the date, then you're going to just scroll down a little bit and it's going to ask you for the duration, right? So if you meet for an hour, then you're going to leave it as 1 hour. If you meet for an hour and a half, you can go to the next column and then select 30 minutes to increase the duration to 1 hour and 30 minutes, right? So just depending on how long you meet for, you're just going to select the appropriate duration. The time zone, you can leave it as it is. So Zoom by default will select the correct time zone for you. So you can leave it as it is. Now, the most important thing is going to be selecting recurring meeting, right? So this is what you want to do in order to establish a recurring meeting for the rest of the semester so that you don't have to keep doing this process over and over again. So go ahead and select recurring meeting. And when you select recurring meeting, notice how it gives you additional options, right? So the first thing it's going to ask for is the recurrence. How often are you meeting, right? So is it daily? And if we click in this column, you'll see there's also a list of options for weekly, monthly, or no fixed time. In our case, we'll say weekly, right? So if we're meeting weekly, I'm going to go ahead and select weekly. And then underneath recurrence is going to ask you, how often is this going to repeat? Is it going to repeat every week? Is it going to repeat every other week? And so forth, right? So if you're meeting every week, you'll just leave it as the first option. If you're meeting every other week, you can select 2, and it tells you at the top, every 2 weeks on Thursday until June 10th, this meeting will occur, right? So this is how you can basically select how often you meet with your class. Now, to answer your question earlier, Paula, I know you said that you meet twice a week, right?
Right.
Right. So you'll see over here where it says occurs on. So by default, since I only selected one date, you can select another day. So if let's say you meet Tuesday and Thursday, you can go ahead and select Tuesday, right? So now,
all right, perfect.
Yeah. So now this meeting will occur every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. Until the selected end date that you want, right? So this is how you can set that up. Awesome. And once you select, these options, then the last thing is to select an end date. And that's basically when is the last time you're going to be meeting. I think it's easier to go by the calendar, by LaGuardia's academic calendar. So you can click on the calendar itself, right? Click on the icon. And when you click on the icon, you can then kind of scroll through the calendar until June. I believe the last day of classes is on June 7th. So in this case, since I selected Thursday for our meeting, then June 3rd will be the last day the class will meet. So I'll just select that. And now this this recurring meeting will occur every week on Thursday at 3 p.m. until June 3rd. And that's going to be our last day for meeting, right? And once you select that option, it should be okay and you should be good to go. There's also another option that you can go with, which is after how many recurrences do you want this meeting to end, right? So you can also specify after 5 occurrences, I want this to be the last occurrence. So you can also use that if you wanted to. But I think for the most part, it's easier to just go with the calendar.
I have a question.
Sure.
If you have a class, let's say my class meets on Mondays and Wednesdays. They meet at the same time, 5:45. But
Okay.
Monday is 2 hours and Wednesday is only 1 hour. Should I just leave it there, right? I shouldn't.
Yeah, because you're using the licensed account, so the duration should be fine. You wouldn't have an issue, right? If you meet for an hour on on Monday and then you meet for like 2 hours on the other day, then yeah, you can select the 1 hour duration. And if you go over the 1 hour duration, it'll still be fine. You wouldn't have any trouble.
2 hours duration, and that's.
Yeah, if you want. Yeah, absolutely. You can select the 2 hour duration.
Thank you.
Right. And then once you set up your, your recurring meeting and you have it set up, you can then kind of continue down the list. Registration, you don't really need to have this, right? This is only if you're going to have a college event or a departmental event and you want people to sign up to the event, then you would go ahead and basically enable this option. But if you're just meeting with your class, you don't need to enable this option. You can leave it as it is, right? And then the passcode is by default is selected, so you want to keep it. And this is only this is just helpful for your students and for you as well. So whenever they want to join a meeting, only the people who have the passcode will be able to join the meeting. So they'll have the invite link or the passcode. They'll be able to join the meeting. So it's always good to have this option enabled. Underneath it, you have the waiting room. The waiting room is just like a virtual room, right? So it really depends on how you want to use it. For the most part, I don't think you need to use the waiting room if you're meeting with your class. But if there is a chance that you think someone outside of your class might join your classroom or something like that, then you can enable the waiting room. And it's just a virtual waiting room where everyone will be placed in a waiting room and you'll be able to see who's in that waiting room and you can admit them if you know that they are in your class, right? So it's just like a security measure to make sure that anyone who joins that meeting actually is in your class or, it belongs in that meeting, right? So you can do that.
Do you recommend that, or if it's for your class, you don't have to?
I don't think for your class you have to necessarily, and you can always enable this option later on, even during the meeting, right? So you can always enable it. And
okay.
and I'll visit it again just to make sure that we cover it one more time so we know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And just want to add to that question. I normally don't see a lot of faculty using the waiting room when they are teaching a class. I do see the waiting room enabled if they are using Zoom for office hours, for instance, if they are meeting with students on a one-on-one basis. Now, for open labs as well, something like what Rosa was describing yesterday, we had an open lab for helping students with technology, and we had a waiting room enabled so that we could, because we didn't know who was going to show up, right? So so in some of those instances, it may be helpful to enable the waiting room. I haven't seen the waiting room enabled when people are teaching classes, but again, it's all your options, right? Because you decide what you think is best for your class.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, and then after the waiting room, you have your video options, and by default, you want to have them set to be off, right? So you want to have the video option turned off. And of course, the host, as well as the participants, when they join the meeting, they'll be able to manually turn their cameras on if they need to, right? So you can have that option set to off. The audio, you should leave it for telephone and computer. In the event or in the case that your students are, joining from a phone, they'll be able to, contribute to the conversation. They'll be able to speak as well as hear. So you don't want to restrict them to just having it be computer audio. It's good to always select telephone and computer audio in this case. And then the last options, meeting options, all right? So you can enable the first option for allow participants to join anytime. Sometimes your students might run into issues, like they might need to troubleshoot before they can log into the meeting, or their connection might not be working, during the time that the meeting starts, and they might join like 5 minutes later. So you can always enable this option to give them that opportunity to troubleshoot and then join the meeting if they need to, just a little bit later. It's always good to mute participants upon entry. And again, just like the video option, just because you're muted, you always have the ability to go and unmute yourself if you need to, right? So enable this option, and people will be able to manually unmute themselves. And then if they need to speak, they can do that as well. The other, the last three options, I don't think you really have to worry about them so much. You don't have to automatically record the meeting. You can always do that manually if you need to. You can block certain regions. I don't really use this option. And again, if you wanted to make someone an alternative host, you can enter their CUNY email in here, and then you'll be able to make them an alternative host, right? And once you go through all of these options and you fill all of them, you can always review them. Just make sure that everything is in order and it's the way you want it to be. Then once you have everything set up, you then just go ahead and click save. And once you click save, it'll take you into the meeting page itself, right? So yeah, I can pause here for just a little bit. And if there's any question, then yeah, please let me know. Right. Okay, so if there's no questions, then that's great. We can continue along. So in the meeting page itself, you'll get several things, right? So the first thing you're going to get under time is right here where it says show all occurrences. So if you click on show all occurrences, it'll show you all of the occurrences for that meeting. And then if you wanted to make any modifications or if you wanted to make any edits, you can then go ahead and do it at this point. If you wanted to delete a specific meeting from the list, you can go ahead and delete that meeting if you wanted to. If you wanted to add another session, you can also do that. So if you missed a session, you can add another session. And as I said earlier, if you wanted to delete or edit a session, you'll be able to do it at this point. And again, you can do that by just simply clicking on show all occurrences, and it will give you the list of all of the occurrences for that meeting. And then if you wanted to make any edits to them, you can go ahead and make these edits or add another session if you wanted to. Now, the most important thing that you're going to need is going to be this invite link, right? So the invite link is what you're going to need. And this is the link that you're going to share with all of your students, right? So you're going to share this link with them, and you can do this via any method, really. So you could do it via email if you wanted to. You could do it via Blackboard if that's how you communicate with your students. You'll copy this link and you'll let them know that, on that specific day that you're going to be meeting. In this case, let's say it was Thursday. So on every Thursday, we're going to use this link, right? So we're going to use this one link for the rest of the semester to join our meetings every Thursday. So you'll copy this link and you'll send it to them. And then every time you meet, they'll just click on this link and they'll be able to join your meeting without any issues. And yeah, and that's really basically it as far as like creating a recurring meeting, right? Again, you just set up the meeting, make sure you fill out the information and have it be as appropriate as possible. And then once you have all of that information set up, the invite link is what you're going to need. So you're going to copy this invite link and send it to your students in an email, as I said, or even via Blackboard, and just let them know to use this single link for the rest of the semester whenever you're going to be meeting, right?
Is it, what do you guys recommend? Because you can also copy the invitation. When you copy the invitation, you get more information, right? In the
right, yeah. So if you wanted to have more information, right, in case, your students, might not click on the link, you can also copy, like the meeting ID and the passcode, right, if you wanted to, right? You can copy this information here and send it to them, right? So they'll have the link, right? And they'll also have the meeting ID and the passcode to the meeting. And if they can't access the meeting via the link itself, then they can use the meeting ID and they can use the passcode to enter the meeting as well.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Something to add there too
Mhm.
is always, I mean, if you're thinking of this in the context of a class, I always tell my students in the beginning of the semester, I post my content on Blackboard and I tell them there's a section called Sessions on Blackboard where I post the link to our Zoom meeting. So every single Saturday, 5 minutes before 10, log on to Blackboard, go to this section and click on this link. So I sort of like train them from the very beginning. And in that case, I only give them the link. If you're obviously doing this for a cohort of students that you don't necessarily know, you may want to give them the full invitation. It really depends on who you're sending this to. Sometimes I have found that students get confused when they get the full Zoom invitation because you have so much information and they don't know where to click. So I try to make it easy for them, right? So it really depends on who you are sending this to, but both are totally fine and okay.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, so let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen for a sec. Right. So now we can go ahead and transition to the next item on the agenda, unless there's a question or two. All right. So, okay. So we go ahead and move along. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my Zoom interface.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is it possible that the link gets damaged or doesn't work?
I haven't ran into a case where the link was like damaged or not working. Not from my experience, at least.
Okay, because yesterday 2 of my kids could not get into the lab, and they emailed me, and I said it's posted on Blackboard, but they could not get in, and I wrote to the tutor, and I don't know if they got in or not because they didn't get back to me. But that's what I'm asking. Do you trust Zoom links 100%?
I can say this. There shouldn't be any reason why the links become broken. Obviously, if the host mistakenly deletes the meeting or updates something in the meeting in the settings, for instance, the passcode, right?
Yes.
I think that was the feature that Mutaz was going over. There's an option for you to make the passcode, something that you will remember easily, right? So if you create a meeting and you let the passcode be automatically generated, and then you remember and you say, you know what, I want the students to remember something easy, so I'm going to make it 1, 2, 3, 4, and you update it, you have already updated the link. So that may be one instance in which it doesn't necessarily mean the link gets broken, but it gets updated. So that may pose a challenge. The other thing, it may be, and this happens normally when we copy and paste content from Zoom to Blackboard to an email. Sometimes there may be an instance where we're missing something or we don't copy everything, the full URL, when you highlight, and then when you paste something, you're pasting something incomplete. So those are the kinds of things that may happen, but the links themselves should work, and there should not be any problems unless, like I said, the host is updating something on the privacy settings.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let me go ahead and share my Zoom interface. Okay, so yeah, the first thing that I want to touch on is the gallery view. So on the upper right corner where it says view over here, if you click it, you can kind of toggle between the Zoom views, right? So if you wanted to highlight a specific person, you can switch to speaker, for instance, in this case, right? And it'll just only highlight that specific person. But if you wanted to see more participants in the session, then you can switch to gallery view, and this will give you a bigger picture of everyone in the meeting, right? So this is something that you can always take a look at. Let me go ahead and go to full screen. Right, so the feature that we're going to take a look at is going to be the breakout rooms, right? So if you look at the bottom of your Zoom control panel, you're going to see that there is a feature to the very far right called breakout rooms. So to begin the process, you just go ahead and click on breakout rooms. And as soon as you click out breakout rooms, you'll get these options over here, right? So you have 3 different options to choose from. The first option is assign manually or assign automatically, sorry. And then the second option is assign manually. And then the last option is to let participants choose a room if they want to.
If you can stop 1 sec.
Sure.
Because I have to be a host.
Right. Yeah. So you have to be a host in order to
If
see.
you're a host, you can create, right?
Right. Yeah.
If I am a co-host, I cannot create. I cannot have.
If you're a co-host, you can create breakout rooms. Yes, if you're a co-host.
I couldn't. We were practicing. I couldn't. It was the host who. Okay, I'll try it again. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, another thing that I may recommend, and this was a new feature that was updated some time ago. I don't remember when, but it's important that when the new features are released, in the past, for instance, last year, that was true, Rosa. Only hosts were able to do breakout rooms and co-hosts were not. But that was a feature that was released and users have to update their clients so that they are able to see those new features. So I would recommend first update your client, make sure that you have the latest version, and we can show you.
I did try. Mm-hmm. And when I clicked there, it told me you have no authorization to update your.
Are you using a school computer?
Yeah, with the school. You have no authorization and contact your administrator.
Yeah, probably because
maybe I should do that.
Yeah, and maybe the person. Yeah, I may have to troubleshoot that on a side. Sometimes the laptops that are provided by the college have a specific restrictions and doesn't let the user install or update software.
No, but this is my own laptop.
Oh, that's your own laptop. So then we may have to troubleshoot, because if that is your own laptop, then there shouldn't be any other administrator because it is your own laptop, right? So we may have to troubleshoot on a site.
So I have to talk to.
Let me follow up with you on a site. I'll connect you maybe with an SDM who can troubleshoot with you the issue. All right.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Right. So yeah, again, you'll click on the breakout feature at the bottom of your Zoom control panel, right? And once you click on this feature, you'll see these 3 options available to you, right? So the first option says assign automatically, and it just means that Zoom will automatically assign people into a breakout room for you. The second option for assign manually, if you wanted to assign people manually, then you'll be able to do that. If you wanted to have people in specific groups or in specific teams, then you can select that option. And then if you just wanted people to, choose a specific room that they wanted to go to, then you'll go ahead and select the last option, right? And you'll see above where it says assign automatically, where it says create, you can choose how many breakout rooms you want to create, right? So in this case, we have 1 breakout room, but if I increase it to 2, notice here at the bottom, Zoom is automatically adjusting the number of participants to the number of rooms that are being created, right? So if we have 2 breakout rooms, I can go ahead and make it 3 if I wanted to, right? And once you choose the number of breakout rooms that you want to create, right? So then you go ahead and click on create. And when you click on create, Zoom will give you an overview of the rooms that have been created and the participants that have been assigned to those rooms, right? So in this case, there's 1 person in each room. And one thing to keep in mind, right? So if you wanted to rename the rooms, right? Instead of having room 1, you wanted to change it to something else, you can just hover over room 1 and then click on where it says rename. And this will allow you to go in and rename room 1 to something else. You might have groups, so you can say group, group A in this instance. And then you keep going along until, you rename all the rooms, right? So you go with group B and so forth, right? And this is how you can rename the rooms if you wanted to something else. Now, if someone is in a room that you don't want them to be in there, if they're in a group and you want to move them somewhere else, you can also do that. You can just go to the person and hover over their name. And when you hover over their name, it'll give you the option to move them to a different room. So you can click on where it says move. And as soon as you click on where it's on move, it'll show you the other rooms that are available, right? So if you wanted to move Rosa, for instance, to room B, you just hover over her name and then click on move to, and then you'll be able to move her to that specific group of room, right? And if you wanted to exchange someone with someone else as well, you can just click on exchange, right? So let's say I wanted to exchange Rosa with Paula. I can just click on Rosa and then exchange her with Paula, and then they'll be exchanged, right? So now Rosa goes to room 3 and Paula goes to room group A, right? So that's how you can kind of move people in between rooms and have them be in the appropriate place. Now, once you have all of your groups created and everyone is in the right group or in the right team, the last thing that you might want to do is at the bottom left corner, you have some additional options, right? So you can go ahead and click on these options. And then from the, from the list of options that show up, you can go ahead and make the breakout rooms even a little bit better. So for instance, in the first screen, we had the ability to let participants choose a room. You can also do that right now if you wanted to, right? And this option where it says allow participants to return to the main session at any time. So basically this will just let your students or your participants come back to the main room. They can leave the breakout session at any point or any time, right? So if that's something you want, then you will enable that. But if you want your participants to be in the breakout session until the duration is up, then don't enable this option, right? So just have it checked off and then automatically move all assigned participants into breakout rooms. This is a good feature to enable because it facilitates the process for everyone. So your participants or your students don't have to do anything, right? As soon as you open up the breakout rooms, they'll automatically be moved to their correct breakout rooms that you've chosen for them, right? So always use this option, right?
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you do this before the breakout rooms start, or do you do it once you break out the room?
No, so this is before the breakout room starts, right? So nothing is happening just yet. Right now, all you're doing is you're setting up the breakout room, right? So you're setting it up, making sure that you have everything the way you want it to be, right? So nothing has happened yet. The breakout rooms are still closed. They're not open just yet. We're just setting up the settings for the breakout room. And once we have the settings figured out, then we can go ahead and open the breakout rooms, right? But nothing is happening at this point yet.
Okay.
And yes, so there a question or no question? Okay. So then after that, you have breakout rooms closes automatically after, and this is the duration of the breakout room session, right? So depending on the activity that you have, right? So you will go ahead and select for how long you want the breakout rooms to be open for. So you might want them to be open for 10, 15, or 20 minutes, right? So you can go ahead and basically select the duration for the breakout rooms. Once you select duration for the breakout room, you should always have this option for notify me when the time is up. So when the time is up, when that 15 minutes is up, Zoom will notify you and tell you, hey, that 15-minute is up. Maybe it's time to close the breakout rooms. And then before you close the breakout rooms is always to, give your students or your participants a countdown. So it's like a warning, hey, the breakout room is we have about 1 minute, it's going to close soon. And Zoom will give them a countdown, right? So you might want to set that countdown timer for probably 60 seconds, right? In case they're finishing up the activity and they're discussing some stuff, they'll have an extra 60 seconds to kind of just get their final thoughts in, right? So always have that option enabled. And once you set these options up, you can then just go ahead and click here, and then you can go ahead and open up the breakout rooms, and everyone will be transported to the breakout rooms, right? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna recreate, and I'm gonna show you the second option for assign manually, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and select assign manually, and then same thing for the breakout rooms. I'll select the breakout room numbers that I want, and then I'm gonna go ahead and click on recreate. So when you click on recreate, notice that nothing has happened yet. So the breakout rooms are empty at this point. No one has been assigned to them, right? And this is because we chose the option to assign people manually into these breakout rooms. And then you'll see next to each room to the right, there's an option where you can assign people into it. So you click on assign, and it'll show you the list of participants in the session, right? And then you can select where you want each person to go, right? So you can select where you want Rosa to go, where I want Pablo to go, where I want Paula to go, right? And you'll go and do this to every breakout room until you populate all the rooms with the number of students or participants in the session. And again, you have the same options as before. You can rename the rooms if you wanted to, and so forth, right? But the only thing that is missing is the exchange and move, right? Because we're manually assigning people, so we know exactly where everyone has to be, okay?
Can you exchange? No.
No, because, I mean, you don't have to at this point, right? Because you're going to manually move everyone into the correct breakout room. So you'll be in charge of where everyone goes, right? When when we set assign automatically, Zoom just randomly pick people and put them in a breakout room, right? So it might have placed someone in a room that we didn't want them to be there. And that's why we can exchange or move people from one room to the other, right? But with this option, you don't have to exchange or move people. And again, once you have everyone in the breakout rooms, you can go into the options and set up your options for the breakout room, right? You might want to change, it might be a 10-minute activity or even less, right? So you'll do that again. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms, right? And when I open the rooms, nothing has happened because no one has been assigned to any room at this point. But Zoom shows you at the top the number of unassigned people or unassigned participants, right? So it tells you, hey, you have some people that haven't been assigned to a room. So you can go through the list, and if you wanted to assign someone at this point to a room, you can go ahead and do that. And also key, if you look, you'll be able to join breakout rooms, right? So if you wanted to go and join, a breakout room to see or to hear the discussion that your participants or your students are having, right? And if you wanted to contribute to that discussion, then you as the host will be able to join a breakout room at any point, right? So you'll select the room that you want to join, and you'll click join, and you'll be able to go into that room. And then when you want to leave that room, at the bottom right corner, instead of end, it's going to be a blue button that says leave breakout room, and you'll be able to leave the breakout room, and then you can join a different room if you wanted to, right? So you'll be able to hop between breakout rooms if you wanted to. And then at the bottom, if you wanted to broadcast a message, right? So if you wanted to say to all of your students or your participants that, let's say we have 1 minute, our activity is going to be up soon, you can send that message to them. You can type out a message and send it to the breakout rooms, and they'll get that message and they'll be notified, hey, you'll have 1 minute left to go. So try to wrap up if you want to. Right? So you can use this broadcast message to all rooms to do that. And yeah, that's basically how you set that up. So let me go ahead and close all the rooms, right? And then again, just really quickly, I'm gonna recreate the option for let participants choose a room, right? So you'll do that, you'll create the rooms and open it up, and the participants will be able to select the room that they wanna join, right? So you let them know that, like if you'll create these rooms, if you have, if you're doing a specific activity, if you wanted them to go to one room that has a specific topic, another room could have a different topic, and the students or the participants will be able to choose which room or which room they wanted to go to based on the topic or the activity that's happening in that room, right? So that's how you can set that up, right? And again, all of the options from before, right? You'll set them up, and you'll see by default, Zoom will enable this feature so that the participants are able to select the room that they want to join. And yeah, that's basically how you go ahead and create breakout rooms. And once you create them, I think they should be okay. You can always experiment with them, and hopefully you don't have any trouble doing any of that. So yeah, so let me pause here for a quick second if anyone has any questions about the breakout rooms.
One thing that I wanted to add is when doing this in the context of a class, I have found it to be helpful to give students at least 15 minutes in breakout rooms if you are thinking of doing an activity and joining each room. because if you want to do an activity for like about 5 or 10 minutes, the technology is very helpful. It works, but it always takes time for students to join a room and to figure out where they are and to complete everything they need to complete. So I always try to put my activities of at least 15 minutes so that I can both encourage students to do what I want them to do, and two, visit each room if I want to and check in with them. So that's one thing I wanted to add from a class perspective.
Right.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah,
It
just
doesn't record, right? You cannot record what happens in the rooms, can you?
That's a good question. So the recording stops. The recording, the way that I see it, the recording follows the host. Okay, so because obviously the host is the person who records the session. In the main session, the recording will show you the silent time that there was in the main room while everybody was in the breakout room. If you enable other participants to record, if you allow them to record the session, one of them in the breakout rooms will be able to do that. But the main recording, for instance, right now, Mutas is the person recording. If he had opened the breakout rooms and sent each one of us to a breakout room, the recording would have not captured that unless he visits each room one at a time. But the recording will capture the time that he was in each room. So if he spent a minute in each of the rooms, that's all it's going to capture. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right. Yeah, so I do want to be respectful of your time because I know it's 2 p.m. at this moment. So just really quickly, I'm going to go over the security features at this point, right? So again, at the bottom of your Zoom control panel to the left, you'll find there's a button for security features. And again, this will be available to you if you are the host, right? So you can go ahead and click on this button and it'll give you an overview of some of the Zoom security features. So the first one is lock meeting, right? So if you wanted to lock your meeting once every person has joined the meeting, then you can go ahead and do that. And if you lock the meeting, then no one else will be able to join the meeting, even if they have the invite link, right? So that's a feature that you can use if you wanted to have a little bit of precaution, or if you wanted to just make sure that no one joins your meeting after you lock it. And you can always unlock it, right? In case someone gets disconnected or leaves the meeting, then you can always go back and unlock the meeting if you need to. But just be aware, if you do lock the meeting, no one will be able to join that meeting. Alternatively, if you wanted to not use that feature, you can enable the waiting room, right? So this will serve as also as a precaution, right? So if you're not too sure who's joining your meeting, you can enable that waiting room. And when a person joins, they'll be placed in a waiting room, and you can go and you can take a look at the waiting room, see who's in the waiting room, right? So if it's your student, you'll know because they'll have their name. And if they are the correct person, then you'll admit them into the meeting. If you don't know the person, then you can ask them to either rename themselves or sign in with the correct Zoom information, right? So you can enable the waiting room to do that for yourself. If you wanted to hide profile pictures, you can do that, right? So if you wanted to hide everyone's profile picture, you can select hide profile picture, and that will hide all profile pictures, and there won't be any pictures on the screen if you wanted to. I've never used it personally, but you can always do that. Allow participants to, there's several options in here. The first thing is share their screen, right? So if you wanted people to share their screen, you can go ahead and enable that option. By default, it'll be turned off, but you can manually go in and enable the option to allow other participants in the session to share their screen if they needed to. You can also disable chat, right? So if you don't want your students to chat, or if you don't want your participants to use the chat feature, you can just go ahead and disable it. By default, it'll always be enabled. So you can go ahead and disable it by just clicking on chat itself, and it'll disable the chat for you. Rename themselves, right? So if someone joins in from a computer that's not their own, or if they join from a cell phone and they don't have their name, right? They can always go ahead and rename themselves, right? So if a student joins your meeting and they only have like their phone number, for instance, in this case, you can tell them to rename themselves, and they can just go into their their icon, and they click on these little 3 dots, right? And they'll be able to go in and rename themselves. And you as the host will also be able to do that, right? You can go in and rename that person if you wanted to. You can ask them who they are. And once you identify who they are, you can go in and rename them yourself if you wanted to. But they can also do it themselves because that feature is enabled. Unmute themselves. By default, we set it up so that participants, as soon as they join the meeting, they'll be muted, but they have the ability to go and mute themselves automatically, right? If they needed to. Same thing with the video. Videos by default, they'll be set to off, but if the participants want to, they can go ahead and turn their cameras on manually, right? So the same thing. And then lastly, the remove participant, right? So if someone is in your class and they're being disruptive, or if someone joins the meeting and they're not supposed to be in that meeting, then you can go ahead and remove that person from the meeting, right? If you remove a person, I believe they will not be able to join back, right? So if you accidentally remove someone from the meeting, they will not be able to join the meeting unless you go into your Zoom settings. And there is a feature that allows you to basically allow people who have been removed from the session to join again, right? So you would need to enable that feature in the settings in case you remove someone and you want them to join the meeting again, right? So you need to enable that in your Zoom profile settings. And once you enable it, if you remove someone from the session, they'll be able to join back in. But if that feature is not enabled and you remove someone, they will not be able to join the session again, right? So I think you should only use it if someone joins your meeting that's not supposed to be there, or if someone is just being highly disruptive to your class environment, then you can go ahead and remove them from the session, but hopefully never have to come to that. But yeah, that's basically really it for the security features, right? So you can use them at your own discretion, right? Take a look at them and see which ones make sense for you to kind of apply. Any questions about the security features?
No, thank you. Every time I come, I learn so much.
I know, really helpful, really helpful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Pablo, to that, or was that?
No. Thank you, Mutaz, for the session. And again, we're going to share the recording after today's session, along with the resource document that he shared both in his screen and via the chat, so that not only you but everyone who register is able to see the recording and the materials as well. So thank you so very much for attending.
Yeah, thank you again so much, everyone, and I
Thank
will
you.
send you
Thank
that email.
you.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks
Paula.
again.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good day, everybody.
Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Bye.